do these numbers have in common? 86,400, 1,440, and 24. Well, if you were to guess seconds in a day, minutes in a day, hours in a day, you would be right. Congratulations. Let's follow that through. 3.1 million, 526,000, and 8,760. That's the number of seconds in a year, minutes in a year, and hours in a year. Man, time stops for no one. You have the time you get, and that's it. If you follow this through, the average lifespan of a man in the United States is 75 years. 75 years. That's only 27,375 days. After age 40, statistically, if you follow that, you have less than 13,000 days to go. And at age 57, yours truly, I've got approximately, if I follow those averages, 6,500 days left. You only have one shot at life, and what you do with that time matters. So we want to ask the question, what really matters? Welcome to the next stage. This is episode 27, and we are glad that you're with us. I'm your host, Rob Stout, and we are launching out a series called What Really Matters. And the reason for this is because your life really matters, and what you do with it really matters, and the impact of it really matter. Moses said in Psalm 90, it was a prayer to God. It says, "Teach us to number our days that we might present a heart of wisdom." We're doing this so that you and I, men who are journeying together, would have an opportunity to live with wisdom and purpose in this life. And so for the next several episodes, we're gonna jump into this series called What Really Matters. And we're gonna have guests on, we're gonna talk to men about what really matters with them. Sometimes it's just gonna be me. I'd rather have guests. We're gonna try really hard to do that. But for today, you won, you lost, I'm not sure, but it's just me. And I'm going to get us started with what really matters by talking about and sharing with you the number one pursuit. Simply put, the number one pursuit in my life that I have learned, there's a parenthesis, that I have learned the hard way over time and through the ups and downs of my life. The number one pursuit is to pursue a life with God. Now I know there are two reactions that come up as soon as I say that. Number one probably is predictable. Kind of like your mom telling you on your way out the door on a cold day, make sure you take your coat, you'll catch cold. Not that you can't catch cold in the cold, by the way. You can freeze to death, but you can't catch a cold. But your mom says, grab your coat, or on your way out the door, you grab the keys when you're 16, 17, 18 years old, and she's like, be careful, and you just kind of roll your eyes, and you're like, it's predictable as the sun coming up. The other reaction that you get when I say, my number one pursuit is to pursue a life with God, the other reaction might be irrelevant. Not my thing. You may be a man of faith and you're really leaning into this. A lot of men who are not of faith, and you are welcome here, would say, that's not the way I roll. I'm not one of those guys. And you just kind of like, not my thing. Kind of like the way when I was on a lacrosse field, watching my nephew play lacrosse, my brother's friend, who will remain nameless, started telling me about when he was in the hospital, and he had to get one of these fancy procedures, and it was a catheter. And so he told me all about how they put it in and how they took it out. And I looked at him and I looked over his shoulder at my brother's other friend. I was just like, what? He goes on and on and on. And I thought, not relevant, dude. Why are you telling me this? I just don't care. I just don't care. To both groups, those who would say predictable, that's what you say, you're a man of faith, you're a believer, or the group who would say irrelevant, I want to tell you, number one, this is 100% not predictable. because it is not the normal rhythm of most men's lives. And it is 100% relevant, because I will tell you that the years of our life as they go by, most men get into middle age, get into using up a good portion of the 75 years that they've got, if they are statistically accurate, without discovering the pursuit of God. So I want to start this series off called What Really Matters, talking about the issue that matters most, and I've found to be most true in life. And I want to talk about the why, and I want to talk about the how. Why is pursuing a life with God the number one pursuit? Two reasons. Come out of two promises. One buried deep in the Old Testament that I just uncovered myself. You guys probably all know this, but I just uncovered this not too long ago. It comes out of Jeremiah chapter 6, verse 16, and it says this: "Stand at the crossroads and look. Ask for the ancient paths. Ask where the good way is and walk in it, and you will find rest for your soul." Promise number two, not just stand at the crossroads and look. Ask for the ancient paths, the one that are proven, the one that are time proven. Ask where the good way is and walk in it. You will find rest for your soul, which is what we all want. Promise number two comes out of the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus, perhaps one of his greatest sermons ever recorded. It is studied in ethics schools as the premier ethic to live by. Matthew chapter 6, verse 33. Jesus says, instead of thinking about everything that's around you, what you have to wear, what you have to eat, what you have to put on, all the stuff, seek first God's kingdom and his righteousness, and everything else will be added to you. Now, those of us who are very practical like myself would look at this and say, well, what about work? Don't I have to earn a living? Yes. Don't I have to work hard and don't I have to get up and grind in order to be successful? Yes, you do. Isn't work inherently good? Isn't it part of the creation mandate that God gave in Genesis, where we were told to be fruitful and multiply, subdue the earth, rule over it, all that stuff? Yes, true. Isn't it part of being a man? Isn't work part of being a man? Yes, it is. Yes, and yes. Is it work the primary goal above everything else, supremely important? No, not according to Jesus. Jesus says that seeking first God's kingdom, the things of him, the things that he thinks about, the things that he is about on earth, and his work, and God's righteousness in your life and displayed through your life is the most important thing. I had a friend of mine. He had he and his brother and his cousin owned this company, a home building company, and it was worth $100 million. They did $100 million in developments across 5 states. They were killing it. They were expanding. They were buying property. $100 million business. Dude was doing really, really well. This is one of the men that was on the team that I used to manage. And he told me his story about how this company crashed during the Great Recession, 2008 to 2012. Company crashed. They couldn't save it. It was in a tailspin. They had to fold. He lost a $100 million company and was starting over in his career in his 50s. And he was telling me the story, and I was like, wow, how are you not, embittered by this? How are you not angry? He goes, oh, I went through some of that. But here's the thing, Rob. It just goes away anyway. He had learned being a man of peace and finding peace in the middle of that because money didn't have him. He had money. He found a way. And I wonder for you, does money have you? Or do you have money? Or some of it? It's amazing to me that the really hard fact of life is that Jesus explains this relationship between peace and happiness and money. He tells another story in Matthew chapter 16. He tells about a guy who was so prosperous, had so much money, that he built barns, tore down all of his barns and built new ones just to have new places to store his grain. He was so wealthy. And that night, he died. And Jesus makes a comment. He says, what does it benefit a person if they were to gain the whole world and lose their own soul? You can have everything. You can be filthy rich and be miserable. Of course, you can be miserable and poor and still be miserable. Money's not the point. Finding peace in life is, no matter how much you have. Jesus' point is that it is foolish to build a life around material things. The cost of losing focus is what's at stake. And so for me, what really matters? What really matters, and again, I've learned this the hard way through pursuing a lot of things, pursuing success at work, pursuing achievement, pursuing a 401k, pursuing getting recognized and advancing and all that kind of stuff. But the thing that I've found that really matters is pursuing a life with God. It's pursuit of a life with God over retirement, over possessions, over the seeming security of having financial security. Why? Because of what Christ promised. That if you seek me and seek my kingdom and seek my righteousness, I will allow all these other things to follow and to fit into place. That's the why. It's because building a life on Christ is what matters most. Everything else will fall into place. That's the why. Now, the how. How do I pursue life with God? How do I make it my number one pursuit? Well, first of all, I don't really like talking about this, so this is just you and me, as if we're sitting over a coffee table. You're like, hey, listen, so what do you do? So just lean in. It's just the two of us here. I want to tell you a secret, okay? How do I pursue a life with God? Lean in here. I spend time with God every morning before I get up and grind during my day. That's it. That's it. I spend time with God every morning before I get up and go after my day, before I go to the gym, before I check my social media, before I check my email, before I check my appointments, before I figure out what's happening, before I do anything. I spend time with God. You know the mantra, rise and grind? How about this one? Rise, seek God's face, then go grind. It will set everything else in place. And I do not share this with you as a boast. In fact, if there is a wounded pilgrim walking along the road with you, I'm it, okay? I very simply am maybe a little farther down the road, have maybe walked this way a little bit more, have learned some lessons, but I just want to encourage you that you don't have to do it perfect either. Just get going in that pursuit. I quoted Psalm 90 earlier about how Moses prayed, teach us the number of days. That guy, of all people, Moses had quite the job. His job was to lead at least a million people from slavery in Egypt to a new land. And they screwed up so bad that it took them over 40 years to get there, because the one generation had to completely die off because they were not worthy of going in because they had rejected God so badly. What did Moses do? How did he do this? He was called the greatest prophet. He was called the greatest prophet. And what did he do? How did he do this? There's a dude with a lot of responsibility. I mean, a lot of people to lead, a load of responsibility on his back. What did he do? He met with God every day. He had a place. It was the original man cave, okay? It was called the tent of meeting. That's what he called it. I call it a man cave. I'm sure it had a recliner. It had probably a big screen TV in there. I don't know. He may have had a cigar humidor. He may have had a kegerator. He might have had a bourbon bar. I don't know what he had in there. But it was his place. He went and met with God. And I can just imagine this meeting sometimes as Moses, who's in this leadership position, has all this weight on his back. He just kind of flips the tent open, the door of the tent, the flap of the tent, whatever it was. He's like, oh, good Lord. Yes, Moses. Well, sorry, God. I just, do you see these people I have to deal with? These people? Moses, have you looked in the mirror lately? I'm sorry, God. It's just that these people make all kinds of excuses about why they can't follow me and follow you. Moses, you mean like you told me when I told you to go to Egypt to talk to Pharaoh to get my people out of there? You told me you couldn't speak well enough, and so you were disqualified? Oh, yeah. Yeah, God, like that. Moses, come here and sit down. Let me talk to you. Let me meet with you the way a friend meets with a friend. Let me give you what you need for today. In fact, I'm working on a great idea. It's bread that I'm going to give to these people every day to remind them that I take care of them, that I feed their bodies and I feed their souls. It's called manna. Here, taste some of this. What do you think? And it was in that setting, and we're told that Moses met with God the way a friend talks to a friend. Moses cultivated time with God, where he gained perspective, humility, comfort, wisdom, sustenance, strength, everything that he needed to do the job. And so have millions of followers of God throughout the centuries. And you can do it too. Another promise out of Jeremiah 29:11 says, you will seek me and you will find me when you search for me with all of your hearts. Man, that's the why, the promise, and the how of why I make God my number one pursuit. It's not just rise and grind. It's rise and meet with God and then go grind. And more than that, it's not just about doing something for God. It's doing something with God. God does not have employees. He certainly doesn't have slaves. He doesn't have hired hands. He doesn't have contract workers. He has friends. And he wants you to be in that group. And it's wide open for anyone who will search for him. If you pursue a life living with God, and not just for God, he will add everything else to you. If you pursue a life and make it your number one pursuit in living with God and not just for God, he will add everything else to you. I mean, quite honestly, kind of rappelling back down into the day-to-day of our life, how many times have we just got up and started going for it in the day? We're thinking, man, I got a lot to do. I got a lot of appointments. I got to get to that breakfast meeting. I've got to check my email, my social media. I've got to do this. I got to send this. I got to get that report done. All that kind of stuff. I mean, I get it. I recently just left a job in the corporate world and said goodbye to the corporate world after 20 years of being there. And I get it. Now there's the weight of starting a new business. There's the weight of how are we going to manage budgets. There's a lot of weight that comes with that. But guess what? It doesn't change the fact that God wants to meet with me every day. And it also is part of what I really want to do, which is impact men and write and speak and publish and do this little podcast that we're developing that I hope spreads all over the world. Men, the reality is that most of us, myself included, for years, we act out on the outside with rage and anger and being short-tempered with our wives and yelling at our kids and making short-sighted decisions that worked. We act out on the outside because we are not filled up on the inside. And what's at stake is everybody around us, including the state of our own souls. If you pursue living a life with God, and not just for God, He will add everything else to your life. That, my friends, is what really matters to me. That is my number one pursuit. If I were to think, what would I lend to this conversation before anybody else takes this topic? I'm going to take it. What really matters in the days and minutes and seconds of our lives is pursuing God. Not perfect at it. First one with my hand in the air. But pursuing after it because of the reward that's out there in knowing Him and finding what Jeremiah called rest for my soul. 86,400 seconds in a day, 1,440 minutes in a day, 24 hours in a day. What difference would it make in your life if you would just simply commit 20 or 30 or 60 of those 1,440 minutes to pursuing a life to follow after Him? Shoot, I know of guys who spend 60, 90, 120 minutes a day in the gym, and then they're like, man, you spent 60 minutes talking to God? I'm like, yeah. And then I go to the gym. Well, that's a lot of time, man. What do you do? Well, we'll get there in a second. But how about this? What would it benefit a man if he were to gain all the muscle mass in the world, but lose his own flabby, atrophied soul? How about that? Think about that. And so what do you do? How do you do this? My challenge for you is this. Get up in the morning. Do your bio stuff you need to do. I don't need to talk to you about doing that. Grab a cup of coffee, grab tea, grab water, whatever it is. Find your most comfortable place in the house. Not your home office, by the way. Too much work energy there, right? Find a place. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. And pray these words. God, would you meet me here this morning? Would you meet me here this morning? And then very simply, read. The Bible's right there. It's thousands of years old. It is timeless. It is true. It works in your life. Read Psalm 1 about the tree planted by a stream of water that grows and flourishes. Read Psalm 23 about finding rest for your soul, about walking through the valley of a shadow of death. Read Psalm 27 where David's fighting battles and then says, the one thing I want is to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord. Grab a journal. Maybe pick your phone up at this time, but only for a notes page. Don't check your social media or anything like that. Make some notes. reflect. Maybe you're a book guy and you're like, hey, listen, I just want an everyday thing. My son-in-law gave me a book for Christmas a couple years ago. It's Tony Dungy's New York Times bestseller, The 1 Year Uncommon Life Daily Challenge. I would encourage you to go get this. Tony Dungy, NFL coach, Super Bowl winner, I believe. The Eagles, I believe. Dungy, great life. What team was he with?
Colts.
The Colts. Okay, I thought he was with the Eagles too. Anyway, Tony Dungy, great guy. Okay. Grab that book. Read it. Get it on Amazon. And then send me a note that you got it so I can tell Tony Dungy I need the endorsement dollars. I need them more than he does. But whatever it is for you, find out what works. I know a man who says, I just love watching the world wake up. And so I love going for walks. I love watching the sunrise. Fantastic. Whatever it is for you, do it. The challenge for you, 20, 30, 60 minutes a day. Start to work that muscle and watch what happens in your life. If you need any help along the way, always here to help. Email me, thenextstage@sherpa5280.com. But don't forget this. If you pursue living a life with God, not just for God, He will add everything else to you. That's His promise, not mine. I want to thank you for being a part of The Next Stage. I'm your host, Rob Stout, and we are releasing episodes every 2 weeks. Please remember to like, share, subscribe to The Next Stage on whatever media channel you're on, and also click the little bell on YouTube to remind you that the next episode is coming out. We would love a 5-star review. That would help the algorithms share this with more people, and we would love to have an effect on more and more men. We'd love it if you give us your feedback, follow us on one of our social media channels, or just send us an email. That'd be fantastic. Would love to hear from you. The Next Stage at Sherpa5280.com. And until next time, keep reaching to achieve your fullest created potential. We're here to help you do that. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.